87% of marketers are using AI to write their emails, and it's destroying their sales. You see, Neil Patel's agency performed a study that found human written content gets 5 times more traffic than AI content. So that means while you're cranking out AI emails, your audience is actually learning to ignore you because you sound like everyone else. So today I'm going to show you the simple framework I use to write emails that have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars for myself and clients. And this simple framework relies on storytelling. How come? Because after testing over 87 email campaigns this year alone, I found that personal stories generate more sales, leads, and build more trust with your readers than anything else. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to use the same prompt inside ChatGPT to write 2 different emails for 2 different markets and different purposes, right? And I'm going to show you how similar all of these AI generated emails are. And no, I'm not just going to use some basic write me an email prompt. I'm going to use a well-formatted and structured prompt to get the best response possible from this AI. I'll show you what I got here. All right, so you can see here I'm using the same model in ChatGPT 5.2, and I'm using well-structured prompts to write these emails. However, these are for 2 separate tasks in 2 different markets. The one on the left is for online fitness coaching. The one on the right is going to be for business consulting, right? And so this happens on the right after a webinar, so I'm asking it to write a promotional email after a webinar. And on the left, I'm just asking for a promotional email to promote the fitness coaching business. And as you can see, I'm just telling it how to write a great email. And what you would expect is for this to write more specifically into those niches and markets. But what it's actually doing is the opposite. And it could be the reason why you're not getting as many sales as you should. So let's take a look at what these outputs are and what's going wrong. So what's the first thing you notice about these emails? They look and sound exactly the same, right? And this is why over-relying on AI to spit out emails as fast as possible makes you sound like everyone else. And that could be the reason why you're getting ignored and not getting as many sales as you should. Let's take a look at some of these patterns. Both emails start with the typical cliche, quick question. And that's way overused, right? This is kind of like going up to the bar and asking your date or someone that you're interested in, do you come here often? Obviously, that person's heard it 1,000 times and they know it's coming next, which means they'll reject you. So why are you using cheesy AI cliches, your customers? You don't. It's not smart. So take another look at these similarities. The if-you statements, right? If you're anything like most busy professionals, if you attended the webinar and didn't buy, these are all in exactly the same place, which brings me to the next similarity. That's exactly why. Those are in every AI email. There's adjectives all over the place. There's adverbs all over the place with ly, words ending in ly, which is very poor copy. You never do that. And then there's the negative patterns, no extreme diets, no daily 90-minute workouts, no guessing. And people usually just don't write like that. So even if you have an email that's generated for different businesses and different offers, if you're over relying on AI, you're going to get the same generic robotic answers. And in business, the market punishes the vague and the specific gets the rewards, right? So if you want to lose sales and traffic, use vague AI copy. That's fine. But if you want to increase revenue, LTV, and conversions while making your customers fall in love with you, there's only one framework you need, and I call it the SLO framework. This stands for Story, Lesson, Offer, which helps you write a one-of-a-kind email that stands out in the inbox in 10 minutes or less without sounding like a generic robot. So let's take a look at how it works. So here's how you can use the SLO framework in just 5 easy steps. But first, let me ask you an important question. What if you never had to struggle with writer's block again and you didn't have to rely on AI for generic answers? Well, the secret is not needing more ideas, you just need a better system at capturing ideas, which leads me to step number 1, which is conflict mapping. You see, humans are wired for conflict, and this goes back to the good old days of being a caveman when movement in the jungle meant life or death, right? So your brain is programmed to pay attention to problems. Conflict equals curiosity, and curiosity equals attention. That's why we love drama. That's why we binge Netflix, right? And that's probably the reason why your emails are getting ignored, because there's no conflict in them. So here's the fix. Using conflict mapping. As you can see here on the screen, I have my conflict mapping template, and this is where you list every conflict you've ever faced, organized by type. And there are 5. So you versus yourself. This is going to be like anxiety, self-doubt, bad decisions. We've all made them, right? You versus another person. This could be a conflict you had with a client, a boss, a partner, a spouse. You versus society, getting fired, canceled, rejected, arrested, right? You versus technology. AI is the hot one for that, algorithms. And you versus your fate, losing a loved one, a business failing, things you couldn't control. Every story you'll ever tell lives in one of these 5 buckets. So just sit down for a minute and brain dump every conflict you've ever had that fall into these categories. And just by understanding these types of conflict, you're going to get ideas faster, whether they're client disasters, embarrassing family dinners, moments you wanted to quit but you didn't. And so by using this system, not only can you capture your unique ideas, but you create ideas so powerful, AI can't replicate them. So congrats, now you know how to do that. Let's take a look at how to turn your conflicts into cash printing emails that don't get ignored. And that starts with step number 2, starting with just one sentence. You see, the single most important line in your email is the first one, because if you get this wrong, then nothing else matters and people aren't going to read your email, right? But most people overthink this and they write 3 paragraphs and the beginning just doesn't make sense and you don't know who's there or what's happening and the reader just gets confused and unsubscribes, right? That's a big no-no. And so your first sentence has one job, and that's to get the reader to read the second sentence. That's it. So if you open with, "Hey name, hope this email finds you well," you've already lost. It's not going to work. They've seen it 1,000 times and your brain skips it automatically, right? But if you open with conflict, the reader can't look away. So there's always one sentence I love to start with, and it's using this template. "Time ago, I had a conflict." That's literally all you need to start a great email, because you're dropping the reader right into the action of the story, right? But without confusion. This simple sentence tells the reader when the story happened, who it happened to, and the problem. And so all you have to do is go to your problem bank, choose a conflict, and write one sentence that sets up the story. Here's an example. "Last month, a client fired me after one call." Here's another example. "3 years ago, I almost shut down my business. Yesterday, I got an email that made my stomach drop." Do you see how intriguing these are? And the person already can grasp what's happening in the world of the story. So all you need to do is just go to your conflict bank, start with one sentence, and then now the reader will have to know what happens next. But most people cut their story short and kill all the tension before it gets built. You've just hooked the reader with one sentence. Now you need to learn how to hold that attention. And holding attention starts with step number 3, which is problem depth, right? Because the middle of your story is where the persuasive magic actually happens. This is where you're going to inject the drama or the parts of the events where things get worse before they get better. So you see, most people rush through this part of the story because they're uncomfortable with sitting on the problem. If you don't have a solution, it can sound like complaining, but your reader actually wants to stay in the problem. Let me explain. Because humans are actually wired to keep reading when there's an unresolved tension. This is why you can't stop watching a movie halfway through. You need to know how it ends. So the middle of your email is where you have to answer these 2 questions. What went wrong? What did it feel like? Because the first one is going to give the people the facts. The second one is going to tell them how they feel about it. Both matter. Here's why. Facts without emotion read like a police report, which is awful to read, and emotions without facts just feel vague, right? So how can you use the problem depth? It's simple. You just take your first sentence opener and expand it with simple event bullets. Example is going to be, "Last month, a client fired me after one call." That's the start of our story, right? Now go deeper into the events. Ask yourself, what happened on the call? And just write bullets underneath the sentence. "I pitched my idea. The boss, she went silent. Then she said, I don't think this is going to work out." Then underneath that, write a question. "What did it feel like?" Write bullets. "My face went hot. I wanted to defend myself, but nothing came out." Next question is, what made it worse? And this is how we're just heightening the stakes of the story, right? So, bullets, "This was my referral from my best client. I told everyone about this deal. Now I had to explain why it fell apart." You see how the tension just builds from these bullets? You're not rushing to a solution. You're letting them sit in the problem with you. And that's what makes the payoff even more special, right? So now that you're deep into the problem, you know how to get these people hooked into your email, into your story. Here's where you pull them out and connect them with what you want to sell. Which brings us to step number 4, the lesson bridge. Do you ever read a story and think, cool story, but why are you telling me this? Usually it's from like your grandpa or something. That's what I call a broken bridge. The trouble is, most people will tell a great story and then awkwardly shove an offer or like a point that doesn't make sense at the end. And this makes you look desperate. The lesson of your story is what connects your story to your sale, right? So without that lesson, you're just entertaining people for free, or you're going to come across scammy, right? And both of those are not a good time. That's why you need to use the lesson bridge, and it works like this, right? Story, lesson, offer. The lesson pulls a takeaway that benefits your reader and connects to what you sell. You need to find a commonality between your conflict and the reader's problem, right? So you can use this simple formula. Conflict of your story, fill in the blanks, is a lot like problem your offer solves. So you got to look for a shared mistake between your story and what your reader is experiencing. This is how they empathize with you, right? Using this mistake in your story that your reader also has is going to make selling your offer a lot easier. So now that you've told them the conflict, transition using this simple template. The mistake I made, fill in the brackets, is a lot like the mistake you're making with your, whatever, emails, business, etc. Now, if you just simply put that in there, you've segued across your story and you've primed the reader to buy. But that's only half the job. Because if you followed these steps, you've got the reader nodding along thinking, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. So, if you stop here, you just gave them a free lesson with nothing in return. This brings us to the final step, which is the call to action and where we tell them to click and buy. So give me 30 seconds and I'll show you how to close every email you ever write for maximum revenue. Here's the deal. You have to give your reader two options. That's it. Path A or path B. And I call this the fork in the road technique. It's where you show path A and they just stay there with the same pain they're already living, or you show them path B, the future your offer gives them. So swipe this template. You can either keep doing path A, which is pain. You can either keep struggling, or you can take path B, which is your offer, and remove this pain fast. Click here. So let's see an example of this in action. You can keep sending AI emails that sound like everyone else and wonder why no one's buying, or you can grab the full system inside Email Profit Academy and start writing emails that convert. Click here to maximize your email ROI in 30 days or less without sounding like a robot. So here's why the fork in the road technique works so well. Most call to actions ask, do you want this? Would you be interested? And that just gives them a yes or no, right? And that's easy. Saying no is super easy. But the fork is asking, which future do you want? So congrats. You've learned how to take in action, which used to feel like maybe later to your reader, and turn it into a decision that has consequences, right? So here's the thing. You can use this framework all you want, but if you don't have an email list to send to, it's not going to help you, right? It's going to be tough. So you might be sitting here and thinking, wow, Parker, this is a great video, but I only have 12 subscribers. So I want you to watch this video next. I'll show you how to build an email list worth selling to, worth growing, full of qualified leads with 11 simple strategies to get you started. Thanks for checking this out. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Otherwise, enjoy your day.